Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of We Watch Shudder. What we do here is, we watch Shudder. It's right there in the name, guys.
Oh, I did not sign up for that.
I am one of your hosts. My name is JD, and who's here with me?
It's Michelle!
Yay! It's Michelle, everybody. And yes,
They're
in fact,
tired of it.
you did sign up. Oh, they're going to get real tired of it if they're already there, man.
Yeah.
They don't even know.
I'm never ending. I like to do a thing until it stops being funny and then keep doing it until it is something that people hate me for. I don't know when to stop.
Well, that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is there are some of us where when it stops being funny to you, like it doesn't even start being funny to us until you get there.
Yep.
Like that's when my amusement begins. Just drive it into the ground.
Yeah. I like to write jokes and then go on stage and see if anybody laughs. And if they did not, then that is comedy gold to me.
Right. Just the real awkward, painful.
Yeah.
Oh, you got. Anyway.
I miss comedy open mics where I would just go and be like, "Today is therapy. I don't care if you guys like this."
I don't know that I miss them. Some days it's a maybe, but it's never a hard yes.
Well, now we have this podcast instead, where we are hilarious.
Right.
They've made it a minute and a half into this where we're telling them how funny we are, so they gotta believe it.
Right, absolutely. It's We Watch Shudder. You know, you guys, some of you know, if you're just tuning in for the first time, this is an interesting selection to make, but okay. What we do is we watch original and exclusive new releases on horror streaming service Shudder. It's a fantastic service. We're not affiliated with Shudder in any way. We just really like it, and we got a lot of free time, and we think our opinions matter.
Well, I don't know if they matter, but I do think everybody should hear them.
Right, absolutely. I'm gonna, whether they matter or not, I'm gonna put them out there.
Absolutely.
So today we've got a movie that this is a first for us here on We Watch Shudder. It's actually a documentary about horror movies, specifically found footage horror movies. This movie is called, just straight and to the point, The Found Footage Phenomenon. And like we always do, I'm just going to read to you here the description of the film straight from the Shudder website. The found footage phenomenon tracks the untold story of the found footage film from its origins before and within Cannibal Holocaust, the Blair Witch Project, and The Last Broadcast, beyond its boom in the late noughties with Paranormal Activity, Cloverfield, and Wreck. The documentary showcases how found footage horror became a global sensation with films such as Koji Shiraishi's Noroi the Curse, Shiromi, and Occult. The Paz Brothers' Jerusalem. It's like Jerusalem with a Z. Andre Ovredal's Troll Hunter. Also the differences between how the British and American film industries took to the genre respectively. Found footage spans 4 decades already, and films such as Host, Death of a Vlogger, and Spree have proven that it's not done with us yet. A Shudder original. First of all, I am pretty sure they worked in the title of every movie that has clips in this documentary into that description. Holy cow, they name dropped a lot of movies in there. Yeah. Michelle! There's not really spoilers in a documentary, but hit us with your thoughts here.
Yeah, okay, well, I was trying to think, like, how do I go approach, like, rating this documentary?
Right.
And I actually found it kind of easy because, like, going into a documentary is the content is interesting, and apart from the clips, not really. Like, it's weird because here's the thing. I enjoyed it. I thought it was cool to listen to people being like, here's the thing, but there wasn't a lot of, like, new information. It kind of dropped a little bit of new information, but, like, rating it purely as a documentary and not talking about the actual movies I love and, like, how they just showed a bunch of clips that I enjoyed, talking about the actual commentary. It was fine. As somebody who loves found footage and probably somebody who likes horror would like this, but as an overall documentary, it wasn't tons of new information. There were a couple people I haven't seen before talking about their stuff. So, just from a rating standpoint, I'm gonna give it a 3.5. It's not super entertaining. It's fine. It's just not great by like documentary standards, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, I agree with you. There were a lot of clips. It's a very clip heavy
Hmm.
documentary. Sort of. I think if you haven't seen a lot of found footage films, and you have definitely seen more than I have, there were a significant number of films in this documentary that I, at the very least, have never seen but have heard of, and then also a few that I had just never heard of at all. I don't tend to like found footage films quite as much as you do. The ones I do like, I really, really, really like. But yeah, so far this isn't. It's not a deep dive documentary, right? This is almost
Hmm.
like if you aren't really a huge found footage fan already, you could watch this and get some ideas on some movies to check out. It's not real.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's spoilery, but it's spoilery in the sense of like it shows you random things without any context.
Hmm.
So you may, it's similar to like a trailer in that sense, in that it's going to give away some of the things, but it doesn't really give away anything plot or significant in that way, which I thought was really nice.
I
Uh,
did like that. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, overall, not a lot of depth here. This one took more of a shotgun approach than maybe picking three or four specific titles along the way. And kind of dissecting how they specifically were like landmark films in the genre. I think that's something that I might have enjoyed a little bit more. But it's not bad. It's well constructed. They got a lot of talking head interviews with a lot of people. As I said, even somebody like me who again isn't a huge found footage fan, but does pay attention to the horror world sort of in general, introduced me to some movies that I was not familiar with. And I'm gonna come in just a little bit similar area to you. I'm gonna go ahead and give this one 2.5 skulls, which gives us a right on average 3 skulls.
Yeah. I think that is fair. It's fine. It has a lot of it's more a montage or like a list than
Yeah.
an actual documentary. Um Before we move on to this movie, I do want to say two documentaries that did it better, because if people do want to see like
Ooh.
some good
Okay.
documentaries, Shudder does have just one documentary that is similar style called Horror Noir, which is about black people's history in horror,
Uh
and
huh.
that is an incredible documentary,
Yeah. Yeah.
talking about like how they evolved to become actual people in the movies that they were starring in, and not just fodder to check a box. So that's incredible. And then if you want something that's a found footage documentary in particular, JD, you know this one, Unknown Dimension, the story of paranormal activity, does a
Yes.
deep dive of all seven movies. So those two are going to be more actual documentaries. This is kind of a list, and it gives you some good ideas. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And honestly, with that in mind, I mean, I don't think we necessarily even really need to spend a whole lot more time specifically talking about this movie. But
Hmm.
what we want to do here, as long as this is sort of a an examination and an introduction into found footage films, we thought we would take some time and talk about our relationships with found footage. Some movies that we like, maybe some movies that, like Michelle mentioned, there are several that she really enjoys that this documentary didn't touch on. We're just going to talk about found footage horror for a little while and see where that takes us. And because she is definitely much more the connoisseur than I am, I'm going to hand it over to Michelle, let her take the reins and get us going here.
Yoink, I have the reins in my hand. Woo,
Woohoo!
giddy up. I do have a question first that is
Okay.
specifically about the documentary. How many movies do you think that you had A, not heard of, and B, not seen, if you had to estimate?
Of ones that I hadn't heard of at all,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't keep a list, but there are a few that come to mind. One is a film called Hate Crime that I was not familiar with. One is a movie called The Poughkeepsie Tapes, which I actually went out right away and watched after I watched this,
Oh,
and we'll
I'm
talk
so
about
sorry.
that at some point. And then I think I've seen the name in passing, but it struck me as such. It felt like such a cheap, obvious found footage knockoff, third generation, whatever found footage movie. But it's called Megan is Missing. And so those three in particular that I don't remember hearing about. And then so far as ones that I haven't seen, I wouldn't even be able to begin to tell you. There are so many in there that I'm familiar with but just haven't seen. But also a decent number that I have seen.
Okay. I was kind of curious. I made a note, as I had mentioned to you before we started recording, that I wrote down and I watched every single clip and I made a note if it was something I wanted to talk about or whatnot. On my list of movies I have not seen and have not heard of, that is the same three. I
Okay.
have seen every other movie in
Okay.
this
Oh, some
documentary.
others that come
And
to mind.
Jesus.
There was a movie called Affliction that I don't remember
Sorry.
ever hearing of.
Oh my
There's
God, Afflicted. Yes,
Afflicted,
that is a
yeah.
must see. I love
Also one
Afflicted.
called The Borderlands.
Yep.
And one that they mentioned right here on the Shudder website in that long ass description, Death of a Vlogger. These are all titles that I had never heard of before
hmm
going into this movie. So, and you've
I
seen these
think
films.
yes. And I would say that Afflicted, when they mentioned that, I just got very excited because it is one that I forgot about.
Okay.
But that is, regardless of if you are a found footage fan or not, like I actively searched them out, which is why I've seen so many. They're kind of my favorite subgenre. Afflicted is a must see for horror fans. That is
All
an
right.
incredible movie.
All right.
So
Well,
I'm glad that they mentioned that.
let's get to the obvious question being begged here. What are the three, Michelle?
Actually, Hate Crime was one of mine
Okay.
as well. Which it seems just based on the clips in this documentary, like maybe it wasn't a very widely released movie, and it is about I think Nazis or anti-Semites of some
Yeah,
sort, and that is the hate crime.
yeah,
Yeah.
I did some looking into it. Should be pointed out that the film was written and directed by a Jewish filmmaker,
Yes.
and he talks in the documentary specifically about how he wanted to make a movie that dealt with a lot of the things that he had dealt with, coming from that background.
Mhm.
So it's not over the top, but it. I'll be honest with you. Watching those clips, the impression I got is this is either going to be a very, very intense, like hyper realistic, really, like, I don't want to say good movie, because if it's as intense as I think it might be, it's not really going to be something I enjoy.
Yeah.
Or these clips are just very heavily cherry picked, and this is a really, really, really bad movie.
Yeah, I'm curious about it and I will be watching it. I don't know how I will feel about it because I enjoy watching found footage. I do not necessarily enjoy all found footage movies.
Yeah,
I do make a point to see them all,
that
but
one is on the
yeah.
list I made of movies that I at least want to go see,
Yeah.
based on the clips I saw here because of their potential.
Yeah. My other two are Jerusalem
Okay.
and Charman. I
Oh
have
yeah,
never heard of
Charman. That was a
those.
name I had to look up now that you mention it.
hmm
Jerusalem. I know this just because I don't even know what service it's streaming on. If it's Shudder, I'm gonna feel real bad. But it's streaming somewhere, and I remember seeing that title because of the. Yeah, it is on Shudder. Go figure. But it's got a very hyper stylized letter Z right in the middle of the title. It's yeah. So I
Yeah.
remember seeing the name, but I knew absolutely nothing about it. I didn't even know it was a found footage film.
Yeah. have never heard of that. So I'm excited that I did get a couple things that I can see from this, and then there are a couple things where I was like, oh man, I'm gonna go back and revisit that one. One on this list that uh, we'll kind of get into the part of like things that I think people should see and
Sure.
probably weren't mentioned, because obviously, like everybody's heard of Cloverfield. That was a very wide release movie, so I'm not
Sure it
going to get into
was.
like those. But Afflicted was on my list of like people should see this for sure. A very good found footage movie that was not in this was Hell House LLC.
Okay, I'm familiar with the name. I haven't seen it.
That is, I fucking love that movie. Do not watch the sequel. The sequel is like a huge steaming pile of garbage. I don't know how they went from like such a good movie to such a terrible movie. I don't understand. It is a stark contrast. But Hell House LLC, I have seen many times. I was surprised it was not mentioned in this. Ghost Watch, they do talk about a lot in the documentary, and that is really cool. For those unfamiliar, Ghost Watch was something that debuted in, I believe, the BBC or
Yep.
something. Yeah.
Played on
And
Halloween one in, I want to say,
mhm.
1992.
Yes, so they just played this and it was very similar to the War of the Worlds radio broadcast where it's a news broadcast where they're like, "Oh, we're going to be doing an investigation of a haunted house." And then slowly things started happening and people believed it was real, and if
Yeah,
I had tuned in,
it
a
was
100% would have bought it.
literally just like War of the Worlds. Like they recorded
Yep.
it several days in advance, right? The whole thing
Mhm.
was pre-recorded, but they played it as if it was a live broadcast.
Yeah.
And
Oh, we're getting phone calls of people saying that weird things are happening
and
in their house.
I actually
Yeah.
did some reading up on it after watching this movie because that's one that's on my list of I need to
Yeah.
see this. This
That's
looks
a
like it
very
might
good
be
movie.
clever enough that I'm into it.
Mhm.
But apparently the BBC got just thousands and thousands of phone calls. Some very positive, but many very, very negative. And people bought it.
Yep.
And that's always something that's gonna get my attention with anything found footage or mockumentary or something like that is how significantly do people buy in, and
Yeah, that
that definitely
is,
makes me interested for sure.
and that is one that because it was from the 90s, I had it on my list to see for a very long time. So that is one like I know that title because it was on my list for years. It is available for free and online because it is a part of public domain.
Oh,
So you can go
nice.
stream it. So definitely go look for it because I just had it on my list and then one day I went to Google, it's available. It's a
Oh yeah,
royalty
yeah.
free
I'm
thing
definitely
on
gonna
one of the
check it out.
libraries. So check that out for sure. Um I'm trying to think if there were others. I'm surprised they didn't talk about Chronicle at all, because that was also a very wide released one, and I know that they tended to focus on um, more indie stuff and kind of the history, but they did talk about a lot of theatrical releases, and Chronicle is incredible.
Yeah, but
So I'm
it's.
surprised they didn't talk
Do you
about
think
that.
it's really much of a horror film? I mean, it's found footage.
Absolutely.
Really?
Chronicle scared me.
Okay.
I was freaked out by Chronicle. Yeah,
Is
that's
this
why. It's
is
kind
this
of
the
more
movie I'm
sci-fi.
thinking of, where there
Uh,
was like the like an asteroid and then the
It
kid
is
goes
Michael B.
crazy?
Jordan's big debut, and Dane DeHaan, whose name I had forgotten, but I just pulled up IMDb
Yeah.
immediately. I guess it's not listed as a horror; it is listed as action drama sci-fi, but it freaked me out because the guy gets superpowers and then goes evil. It's like there's another movie out there that does it's. That's a concept. I'm not going to try to figure out the name of the other things, but it freaked me out. So I was surprised it wasn't mentioned.
Are you thinking
So
of Brightburn?
yes, I am. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
With that
I
one
was like,
where
I'm
it's
not
like,
gonna try to.
oh, it's like what if Superman was a psychopath?
Yes, great
Yeah,
movie.
that's basically that movie. It's like, what if
Yeah,
what if Superman came to Earth, but he was a complete maniac?
yes, and that's a great movie, and it is basically Chronicle,
Yeah.
but they're very similar. So Chronicle freaked me out. I guess technically not horror. So yeah, those are the recommendations I have based on this documentary and based on my experience with found footage and things that people probably haven't heard of because, duh, everybody's heard of Paranormal Activity. If you are
Right.
listening to this podcast and you have never heard the phrase Paranormal Activity referred to as a movie, please message me and tell me where you have been.
Right.
How would you get to this podcast? So clearly you
Like,
know what horror movies
have you been
are.
locked in somebody's torture basement for several
Do you need
years?
help? Yeah,
Are
so
you that
everybody's familiar with
Are you that lady from the Poughkeepsie tapes?
Oh, should we talk about the Poughkeepsie
We'll
tapes?
get there. I do want to say,
Yeah.
as I said,
Mhm.
the found footage stuff that I have enjoyed, I really, really like, and a lot of what I like is some of the much bigger, massive success stories. Again, I was the perfect age when the Blair Witch Project was released. I also got to enjoy a certain amount of it because I did catch a decent amount of the wave of people believing like, oh, there's this movie, but it's like a real story. But Heather Donahue, I used to religiously watch Late Night with David Letterman or The Late Show with David Letterman on CBS. And Heather Donahue was on Letterman the night before the movie was released. So, and I happened to see it. And so, like, I knew that the movie, I guess it was the night before the movie was released here in Fargo. It might have been after it was initially released nationwide. But I knew people who believed it. And I was like, look, if you stop and think for a second, if this was actual film footage of people who disappeared in the woods and then were never found alive, they would never let this see the light of day in a nationwide theatrical release film. Are you out of your mind? But they did, that's what I mean by what really gets me is people's ability to buy in, because I knew it was a movie. And like, sort of the downfall of a lot of movies like this, a lot of horror movies in general, but I think specifically or especially found footage movies, is once you've seen them, like the replay value in a lot of them is not super great. But the Blair Witch Project creeps me the fuck out to this day. Like, I know it's not real, but there's just something about it's so cheap and so haggard, and like it looks like a bunch of dumb film students went off into the woods and died. And so that's one that I absolutely love.
I do want to comment on Blair Witch before we move on because I was 10 when I saw Blair Witch Project.
Maybe a little too young.
Yeah, because we talked about in the other one, like I grew up horror movies and I'm super fucked up now because of it, and I'm constantly looking for the next thrill. But yeah, I was 10. I 100% believe that. I did not have critical thinking skills.
Sure.
So I was like, oh my God. And of course, like it was my Uncle Jeff, who we've talked about, brought it to my grandma's house on a VHS tape and just put it in and hit play. I knew nothing.
Didn't explain anything.
Did not explain. Did not say like, "Hey, we're gonna watch a horror movie, but don't worry, it's just a movie. These people are fine." Nothing. Just hit it in, hit play, and I was like, "What are we watching?" And it scarred me. I am still terrified of the woods.
Yeah,
that has. I think Blair Witch is why I love found footage so much, because that was like as far as I know, that's the first movie that terrified me, and scared the shit out of me. The Blair Witch remake, I know people don't like it. It scared the shit out of me to the point where I turned to my friend Aaron and I said, I made a mistake. I should not be here.
You're talking about the one from just a couple of years ago that's just called Blair Witch?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually really like that one too. And what I like about it is, so Blair Witch, the first Blair Witch Project obviously wasn't the start of found footage. You know, it's where found footage exploded into the limelight for sure.
It became a found footage phenomenon.
Oh, I see what you did there. But then when Blair Witch came out a few years back, like by that time you've now had a full generation of found footage films that have tried to do their own things with that concept. And what I really loved about Blair Witch is it almost became this sort of like meta breakdown of the entire genre that the original film had spawned. Like, they took all these branches from that tree and folded them back in on it, and I really, really like that. There's also an element to Blair Witch that has fucked me up since the first time I saw it, because it's one of those things where I was like, I'm not even sure it was what I thought it was, and then I watched it again and I was right.
The breaking of the branches without spoiling?
No.
Because that's the part that got me.
Okay, well, I mean, big spoiler warning here if you haven't seen Blair Witch.
Yep. Skip 10 seconds.
It's okay, sort of crucial to the whole thing is there's an element at the beginning where the lady is watching a video clip that I think somebody sent to her.
Yes. Ooh, I know what you're talking about.
And that clip happens at the end of the movie. And if you're
I love that movie.
I watched it with 3 or 4 other people. I'm the only one who caught that.
Oh, I caught it.
I was like, oh
terrified.
my God. It fucked me up.
That
movie.
Blair Witch is like,
yeah.
I love that movie so much, and people give it hate, but like,
that
scared the shit out of me. It is one of the few movies I can say like I am terrified of.
Yeah.
And I love it.
And then of course, you already mentioned them, and they are legendary for a reason. At least for me, I am over the moon about the first 3 Paranormal Activity films.
Same.
As starting with number 4, they lost me, and I haven't cared since then. But that first 3, I think I may have said it before. If not on a podcast you've already heard, it's on a podcast you're going to hear that we already recorded.
It's on the documentary.
Yeah, this might be, like, the Paranormal Activity series is, for me, the only trilogy of movies I've ever seen where I actually think they get better as they go. Like, I think 3 is better than 2 is better than 1, and 1 is fantastic. They just get better and better and better
for me, but
there
are parts of 3 I really like, but 2 is like
that oscillating fan in part 3
I know,
is
exactly.
just, it's the most brilliant fucking thing ever. Oh, it's so great.
And then she turns around, the sheet just falls.
Yeah.
It just falls.
My favorite,
God.
I saw Paranormal 3 in a packed theater. Had to be like 200 people there.
Oh, God.
And I'm sitting in the very, very back row in the corner, like, far end seat, right?
Oh, yep.
And this place is packed, and they get to that end sequence where they leave the house and he goes out to the garage, and he's got to turn the light on the camera. And he turns the light on, and there's that creepy old lady's face right there. That old lady's face popped up, and in this theater full of people, from the back of the theater in the corner, I just go, oh shit! Like, really loud, because it scared the fuck out of me. I knew it was coming. Obviously, something's coming, right? The instant that light turns on, you know something's gonna be there, and it was just creepy old lady face, and I just screamed.
I've got to vouch for anybody who has not been in a theater with JD before. I have seen multiple horror movies with you, not even like we've just happened to be at them, like Midsommar, and you were behind me, and I just kept hearing you comment the whole time, like, oh shit, like throughout that whole movie. And every time I was a little bit scared, I just hear you like, oh damn.
I try my best to keep it under my breath, but like
it's
like,
so
oh
great.
Shit. Yeah, it was
I can only imagine you just like, oh shit.
Yeah,
it was.
I love those movies. They're fantastic.
I do appreciate this is going to be a longer episode, which I think people should have expected because we're talking about many movies.
Right.
But I do like that this has just turned into us raving about like a bunch of different films that we can't talk about because they're not Shudder.
Yeah, well, and speaking of found footage, though, I did bring it up. Let's talk about. So one of the movies that I really wanted to see after I got done with this documentary was a movie called The Poughkeepsie Tapes. Because, again, some of the clips that they showed me from that film in this documentary were clips that made it seem like, much the same as that movie Hate Crime, like, there's a real good chance this movie is going to be dumb as a post, but there's a good chance it might also be legitimately, like, intense and fucked up and weird. And So I immediately watched that movie this afternoon after watching the documentary, and as it turns out, that movie is fucking dumb as a post. It's I don't know if you guys have seen this movie, the Poughkeepsie Tapes, but I didn't buy it for a minute, right? Like nothing. They tried real hard, and some of the video clips are gross and intense. But I didn't buy any of it at any point whatsoever. And they spend a lot of time like sending that movie up in this documentary, and that makes me anxious about some of those other movies. That's what makes me say, like, is it gonna be actually really good, or are these just cherry picked clips?
And I can say that, like, based on what I have heard, because I actively seek out found footage,
Uh huh.
Poughkeepsie Tapes keeps winding up on people's lists of movies that like found footage fans have to watch, and I did not like it. And then I watched this documentary today. You messaged me saying I'm gonna go watch this, and I went, yeah, I'm probably gonna rewatch it because this movie is once again telling me my opinion is wrong. And then you messaged me like, this is awful,
Yeah,
or however you said it, and I was like, okay, so I'm not wrong, because
it's
like I don't get why people like it.
right, and it's one that I had heard of prior to seeing
Hmm.
the movie, but I didn't know anything about it. And then I saw these again. It's one that I had seen on streaming service somewhere, and I read the description of it, and I'm like, yeah, this is probably not going to be for me. And then some of the clips, we were talking about this. There is a sub genre of found footage that. I'm not personally a fan of, but I have like a real morbid clinical fascination with the simulated snuff film. Like these movies, like they actually mention it in the documentary very briefly. Movies that I've never seen, but I know by reputation. A series called August Underground. And then this movie, The Poughkeepsie Tapes, is a mockumentary. But the tapes they're talking about are tapes that were made by a serial killer. They're just recording all this depraved, fucked up stuff that he did to his victims.
Basically the Toolbox Killer.
Yeah, it's very
Is
similar to
essentially-
the Toolbox Killer. Yeah, and it's
but not good.
no, and it's I don't know. It was I keep seeing it come up on lists and people saying, "Oh, this movie is so fucked up and intense," and like it wants to be fucked up and intense, but I just like I don't buy any of it at any given point. So it's like.
Same.
Like, to me, it's just like, oh, you just wanted to have a scene in your movie where you kill a child and then you get to say that awful things happen to that child, but you didn't earn it, you didn't do anything with it, and it was just ho-hum.
Yeah, it felt
Sometimes
like
I'm baffled by
disjointed
what people
murder
like.
scenes.
Have you seen
Same.
Megan is Missing?
Yes, but it has been a long enough time that I don't remember a lot.
Okay, so
It is missing in my memory quite a bit. But I know that it is not like on my list of bad or very good movies. It's just a movie that I have seen.
sure.
One I do want to mention because I forgot to include this in my list.
Uh-huh.
I had forgotten about this movie, but I think about the very final moments of this movie a lot and could not remember what it was. The Borderlands, 2013. Have you seen that movie?
I hadn't even heard of that movie until this
Okay.
documentary.
Put that on your list because they very briefly mention it. I really enjoyed that movie, and there, like, the ending of that is one that I'll just like randomly pop into my head, like, oh shit, I can't believe that, and then like I go on with my day, but I'm like, man, I wish I could remember what movie that was. And when they showed a clip from it, I went, thank God, because I'm gonna go back and rewatch that.
So
That is a good
Afflicted
movie.
and Borderlands.
Yes, I would say The Borderlands,
Borderlands.
and it is one word, The Borderlands 2013 and Afflicted are like my two highest recommended um movies. Oh, and Ghostwatch, of course. But
Gotcha.
those are my three that, like, if you enjoy found footage, the three they mentioned, those are definitely like must see. And I can see people not liking the Borderlands, but I love that ending so much. I enjoyed it overall, but like the ending is
Is that a New
Irish?
Zealand? Irish. Okay,
Or-
not New Zealand.
Oh wait,
one.
it Where is it from? It because it says it's London Fright Fest Film Festival. I thought it took place in Ireland. Um, I don't know where this. It just says United Kingdom. I thought it was Irish, but it must be English of some sort.
Right on, right on. There
Yeah,
is
that's where it is.
a one movie that didn't get mentioned in this documentary, and it's sort of found footage, but it kind of runs that found footage mockumentary sort of hybridizing, and then there's a little bit of dramatic elements worked in. It's a movie called Mr. Jones from 2013. Have you seen this film?
I know I have heard of it. Let me go look because I
It's
feel.
there's this guy and his girlfriend. They go out to the woods for a year to make a documentary, and then they start to have weird encounters with some apparent person out in the
Oh, no, I have
woods.
not actually
It's
seen
got a
that
lot
example of
of
it.
really bizarre sort of like H.P. Lovecraft sort of elements mixed in. Really sort of odd, like almost like H.P. Lovecraft meets the Blair Witch Project in a lot of ways. This
Yeah,
is
I'm
a
looking at some stills and I'm very excited. I'd heard of it and I have never seen this. I can look
Yeah,
it up
it's
for
one
me.
that I watched just entirely on a whim because the description of it was super interesting, and it turned out to be really, really good. I enjoy the heck out of it. That's one that I think people should check out that was not mentioned in this documentary. There's several different movies out there called Mr. Jones. You want the one from 2013 starring John Foster and Sarah Jones.
God, now I'm just going down a rabbit hole of Googling and being like, I'm like, wow, they didn't mention As Above, So Below. Wow, they didn't mention the taking of Deborah Logan. Like, I could do this for hours. And I'm like, I'm not going
Well,
to do it to all of you. But, like, every time I look up, like, Mr. Jones, it's like recommended. And
we
I'm like, oh, yeah, that one
that's
too.
okay. We don't need them to mention the taking
No,
of
I
Deborah
know. I'm just,
Logan. I didn't.
I, I didn't love it. But
No, I
that's like
didn't either.
that's exactly what my niche is found footage and exorcisms. If you have those two things together, I'm 100% in.
I'm told that movie Wreck is pretty good, but I'm one of the unfortunate
Yes,
saps who saw the American remake Quarantine first.
which is also good.
It's terrible.
I really like Quarantine. I was
Well,
also
you've been wrong before.
probably younger when I saw it. I know. Hang on. What age was I when I saw Quarantine? So it was 2008 and I saw it right when it was released, so I would have been 19, so still young and naive.
Yeah,
So I haven't seen it since then.
it's no
Um,
excuse, Michelle.
I know Jennifer Carpenter's face is hard to look at though, and that makes for a good horror movie.
Wow.
She does no, she does very good horror movie faces. So
Opinions
she is
expressed
also
by
in.
Michelle on We Watch Shudder
Hang
are
on,
opinions only of
her
Michelle.
face, her face in what is her exorcism movie?
The
The
Exorcism of
Exorcism of
Emily
Emily
Rose.
Rose. The way that she can contort her face when she is scared or possessed, her face makes for creepy horror movies. And I mean that in like her muscle structure and her ability to move.
Yeah.
I can't make my face do the expressions that she does.
Yeah.
They are very scary and I enjoy that.
Keep trying to dig your way out of this hole, Michelle.
I am just saying, if I had a
No, you're
face
not wrong.
that
She
was
she has a
perfect
very
for horror
expressive face for horror movies. You're very right.
movies, yeah, I think she's a beautiful human being. I think her face can do crazy shit, and I'm jealous. I wish I could do the terrifying faces she does
Oh.
in The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
So you
She's gonna
guys.
listen to this and be so mad at me.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
Just-
she's
yeah.
definitely.
Jennifer Carpenter, I'm so sorry. And she's gonna hit
Oh.
me up on Instagram and be like, "You fucking,
Yeah.
I'm gonna fuck you up," and I'll be like, "As long as you make those faces, I'm on board. It's good. Let's do it."
Just doesn't end. Guys, we could probably sit here and talk about found footage
We
movies
could.
forever. Check out the
We
found footage
could.
phenomenon on on Shudder if you're just looking for some movies that you haven't seen before. Another one that they mention is this old movie from like the 1960s called The Diary of David Holtzman. That looks like it's about some sort of creepy, weird peeping Tom guy. And so I'm definitely going to take a look at that one too. Lots
You're
of
not
good.
thinking of Peeping Tom.
No,
are
I'm
you?
thinking of Diary of David Holtzman. It's a
Yep.
completely
Okay.
different movie than
I-
Peeping
I
Tom,
was
Michelle.
wondering-
I'm aware of
Hang
Peeping
on.
Tom, Michelle.
I was asking because I was trying to remember if Peeping Tom was a movie.
It is, yes.
And so this diary one you just mentioned, I missed that. So I'm
Yeah.
making a note. There's now 4 movies I have not seen. That's why I wanted to clarify.
Right on,
Cool.
right on.
I got a 4th movie to watch. Meh, meh, meh.
All right, so we're going to probably go watch more horror movies, and then we'll talk about
Always.
more horror movies, and then who knows what's going to happen. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.